In this video, I will be talking about the types of cross-validation methods. So before we move any further, let's look at the data that we have. We generally divide our data into two parts, training part and the testing part. A general ratio of 70 by 30% is taken here, or it could be 80-20 depending on the amount of data that you have. The training data could further be divided into two parts, a training part and a validation part. We have to remember that the validation part is used basically to tune our hyperparameters and select the best model, whereas my testing is done out after I train and validate a model. I test it on some unseen data to be able to evaluate the model. So the types of cross-validation available is leave one out cross-validation, k-fold cross-validation, stratified cross-validation, and time series cross-validation. In leave one out cross-validation, let's assume that suppose I have a data set with 100 rows. So what I will do is I will leave the first row and train my model on the rest 99 rows. Then the second model, how do I go about it? I leave the second row and train my model with the rest 99 rows. Similarly, in the third, I'll leave the third one out. Basically, in every model, I'm leaving out one row. And then what I do is I take an average of these values, the mean square error I take for all these models, and I take the average to be able to evaluate the error of this model. In the k-fold cross-validation, suppose I have again a data set of 100, and if I'm going for k, so the k value may be specified to 5, so I will divide my data set into 5 parts. So if I have 100 rows, I will keep 20 for a 5-fold CV into the test set initially. This 20, so I'm basically training my data set on the first 80 rows and taking the last 20 for the testing. Then I take these 3, that is basically 60. I take 20 from in between here for the test set, and again 20 from the last rows, and I train my model. Similarly, I keep shifting this depending on the number of k that I have chosen. So here I have chosen for k is 5. I have 5 models here being generated, and again I take the average of the error generated. In stratified cross-validation, what I do is that I again split it into whatever folds that I have. So if I have 5 folds, then again I'll divide my data set into 5 parts. But the basic idea is that I have to retain the appropriate number of samples of each class in every test data that I take. So here I try and preserve that there's a certain ratio. So here I have 2 red and 3 green. I have 3 red, 2 green. I try and preserve a ratio as much as possible so that my testing data is not completely green or not completely red. So if I have these 2 classes, and if I have multiple classes, I try and retain a ratio as much as possible to be able to have instances from every possible class. So that's my stratified one. In the time series cross-validation, what we do is that here my data is coming into a time series. So we have data which is being previously trained onto the previous time model that I have. It is validated by maybe, so if I have a model which is trained from 2010 to 2011, I validate it with 2012 data and test it on the new data that I have. And this keeps increasing with the timeline. So this is the way I do a cross-validation in the time series data, where I keep moving across with the time here. So these are the 4 types of cross-validation available. Thank you.